Hey, everybody. This is Diane.
Along with Todd in Los Angeles.
And we would like to welcome you to the very first edition of The Word, a preacher podcast on Southgate Media.
You need it to be a little more The Word. You got to get that effect going.
So I just want to tell everybody that Todd came up with a name, and it really is a perfect name. So I got to have you say it again.
The Word.
With a little bit of a twang, right?
Yeah, I can't quite do it. What you need is you need some really deep baritone, South Texas, and then you got it, right?
We'll work on that. So, just so everybody's kind of up to speed with us, this is the first episode that we're doing. It looks at this point like I'm probably going to have some rotating co-hosts, so I think that'll be a lot of fun. And we're not going to be real heavy on the comic book spoilers. We may touch on the comic books just a little bit, but I'm definitely coming at this not knowing the comic books and just starting to read them now. So
yeah, well, I'm gonna give you everything I remember from the comic books in about 30 seconds.
And it sounds like of the other two people that might be rotating out with you, one is like me. She doesn't really know the books, and she's just coming to this fresh. And the other one is more like you and really knows the books pretty well.
No, I don't know the books at all. I read the first 12 issues of Preacher back in 1990 something, right?
So you're coming to this with some knowledge.
Very little.
So I just want to say before we get going that I completely fell in love with this series the first time I watched it, and I think it's going to be AMC's next big hit, which is part of the reason that I wanted to do this, because I think it's just fantastic. It's cutting ground that, The Walking Dead did years ago. I once again found myself watching an episode going, this is amazing, and this has not been done before.
Thank God. So, it's interesting, right? Because I was just rewatching the first episode before signing on tonight. And so, the thing that really struck me the most was, first and foremost, that for something that Seth Rogen is involved in, it's actually really good.
It's really good.
And I had no hopes for it when I first heard that AMC was going to do this show because of Seth. And the last comic book thing that Seth was involved in, of course, was Green Hornet. It was a complete disaster. And I was really surprised. Now, it is based more or less on the works of Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Garth Ennis, at the time he created Preacher, he was coming off of a really phenomenal run on Hellblazer, which is a great horror comic book.
Which I totally didn't realize until I went back and was looking up information about Garth Ennis. So I was pretty excited to find that out.
Yeah, and the Hellblazer run had been really, really good. And it was unfortunate for me that I wasn't able to transition over to Preacher. The one comic book store in Anchorage, Alaska, had gone broke by that point or something. Getting comic books all of a sudden became really difficult in Anchorage for a period of time. And by the time I moved back to the lower 48 and was in Seattle, I was past doing comic books for the most part. So,
I'm still kind of trying to figure out how I missed this one, but I'll be honest and say I was a latecomer to The Walking Dead too, and it's just really fun to kind of be back in that place where comic books are awesome again. Even old comic books. Old by our standards, anyway.
Garth and Steve did something really amazing with the Preacher comic, and it's completely over the top. And one of the things I really love the most about the show is that it does reflect this tone, and the tone is what two English guys think the Wild Wild West is all about.
Oh, that's funny.
Because it's so mythological, as you're watching the show, so completely over the top, right? That American writers, even American writers aren't capable of taking things this far over the top on the on the Old West theme. but a couple guys from England who have absolutely no business talking about the American West. Perfect.
Completely perfect. So that takes me to the first piece of format that I'm actually stealing this format from Biters, which is the Walking Dead podcast I work on, which I love. So I'm going to kind of push us into this format, and if it works, that's awesome. If not, if people have feedback, I'd totally love to hear about where people would like this podcast to go, preferably politely. So I'm going to rate this episode really high. I don't think I've ever given a 5 out of 5 to anything, but I am giving this 5 homemade bazookas out of 5. So how would you rate it?
Okay, honestly, I thought the pilot meandered between amazing and kind of slow.
Okay.
I'll give it 3 out of 5 bazookas.
So
the best pilot I've ever seen is Breaking Bad. And unfortunately, that's a comparison. It is a comparison that'll take a long time for it to fade in my memory.
I am completely going to have to go back, and I've been really wanting to rewatch Breaking Bad, so that's definitely on my list. I'm also quite honestly going to pick up the Outcast pilot and see how that looks, because it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, but I thought it was a solid episode. I was pleasantly surprised because I expected the writing to be a whole lot worse. But and the best part was I didn't have this real preconceived notion of it, though, from the standpoint of I read, like I said, the first 12 issues a long time ago, and I remembered thinking, wow, this is something different, but I don't remember the story.
And I didn't have any preconceived notions either, which I suspect is part of the reason I'm rating it so highly.
Yeah.
I didn't have any expectations of who the Preacher was, who Tulip was, who Cassidy was. So it was really fun to just kind of go into that with both eyes wide open.
So what do you want to talk about next here?
So I thought I'd just throw out a few factoids. I looked up the ratings, and I had kind of a hard time deciphering what Variety was trying to say the ratings were. But what I came away with was that it had 13.8 million viewers once we factor in the Live Plus 3 or the Live Plus 7. And that's close to Walking Dead numbers for the first season. So
how many viewers?
3.8 million, which is pretty darn respectable.
Right. Well, that's actually quite good. It's about a third to a half of what Game of Thrones is arguably the biggest thing on TV right now is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's not bad, especially for something that nobody is going to have any understanding.
Right. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that AMC really does have something that's just going to grow and grow on its hands. So I'm really hoping that's the case. I thought I would just hit real quickly who our directors and who our writers were. And then you said quite a bit about Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. The only thing I want to add, and I thought this was super funny, is that Steve Dillon actually was involved in the 1978 production of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Good for him.
Yeah, I had no idea. He was involved from like a camera and production kind of standpoint. So I thought that was super funny. So just real quick, we have Evan Goldberg and Steve Rogen, who are writing partners and have worked together for a long time. And they've done a lot of stuff like, the 40-Year-Old Virgin, Pineapple Express, This Is the End, The Interview. They've worked on all of these things together. And then there was another guy involved in the writing. So they were the directors. They were also the 2 out of 3 writers, and the other guy involved in the writing was credited for White Oleander, which I actually thought was a good movie that had Michelle Pfeiffer in it. And then a movie called The Great New Wonderful, which I've never heard of. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, not at all.
And, I will agree with you. There was a lot of discussion around whether or not Seth Rogen was going to crash this. I don't think he crashed it. I think he landed it. He did a great job. It was really funny and really dark all at the same time.
Which is what it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And the other thing that I looked at that I had not really taken a look at since this premiered is it got huge critical acclaim. It was really widely well received by the critics. So, again, I just think it bodes really well for the future of this show. And as of today's taping, they did get renewed for a longer season 2.
Right.
Which is pretty exciting.
Very typical AMC style.
Right. The shorter first season, and then the extended future seasons. So I also thought we would talk about featured cast member. So I don't know that you have any idea who it's going to be.
I'm thinking you want to talk about Tulip. You got yourself quite a crush on that girl.
So Todd's been teasing me that this really needs to be called the Tulip Show, and I have to admit, I have a total girl boner for Tulip. She's awesome. So she's played by an actress named Ruth Negga, and Ruth was born in 1982. IMDb didn't have her birth date, but get this, she was born in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Okay.
So, I mean, when you look at her, you can totally see that. She's really beautiful and in that kind of uniquely foreign way. So, she's got tons and tons of credits as an actress. She, in the recent movies, recent releases, she was in the Warcraft movie that just came out, which I haven't seen yet, but I suspect...
Nobody has in the United States.
It will creep its way into our home at some point, I'm sure.
It's done really well. It's a weird movie, right? It's done really well every place else but the U.S. Like, nobody in the U.S. cares. Right. But it made millions in China and Europe, so...
Well, and she played Mildred Loving in the movie Loving, about the first interracial couple to fight in the court system for interracial marriage. Which I really want to see that. I think she probably does an amazing job. She was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I have not watched, but my husband said she was awesome in that. She had just a tiny bit part in World War Z, so now I'm going to go back and look for her because it's an excuse to watch that movie again. And then...
just as an interruption, did you read the book for World War Z?
Totally different. Completely
so
different from the film. I enjoyed them both, but they were completely different. It's like they weren't even related.
Right.
Just a couple more things about Ruth Negga. She was in a series called Love and Hate, or Love/Hate, that people said was really good. Haven't seen that. And a friend of mine told me to check out Misfits, which is another TV series she was in. So, sounds like she's got a lot of great stuff out there. And, boy, any excuse to watch Tulip O'Hare.
So yeah, I mean, she's quite a character.
Yeah.
Character on the show.
She's going to be phenomenal. I think she's going to be just a lot of fun in this show. That actually kind of leads into my good. So the way that we kind of break this up when we do biters is good, bad, and ugly, or that's the way the original guys did it. We do epic fail and epic fail. So I kind of, I'm playing with the theme of Preacher. I thought we could do the gospel, which is the good news. The book of Job, which is kind of trials, tribulations, either things that our characters have gone through or things that we struggled with watching the series. And then the last thing that I thought we could do as far as a nice round 3 is Revelation, which is either what did we learn in this episode or what are we hoping for in future episodes. So I thought that was kind of the way we would take it tonight. And then the word at the very end is just kind of us mentioning those other little one-off things that we really enjoyed or didn't particularly enjoy about the episode. So does that sound doable?
Sure.
So because I rated this a 5 out of 5, my take on the gospel is really long, so you're going to have to bear with me. My first absolutely was Tulip, and I just wanted to bring up a couple of other things about her. So I loved it when she made the homemade bazooka. I thought that was awesome.
Right.
And I thought her interaction with those kids was really hilarious. That little girl, I'm 10 and I'm in charge. I bet you are, honey.
Yeah.
And then her kill, the way that we were introduced to her, was really awesome. Who kills a guy with a corn cob? Really?
Yeah, again, yeah. Pretty bloody cool.
Yeah. And then, actually this is something that a couple of the critics said about her, and I think it's really prescient. I think it's really smart. they say, you know, she's really the ace up the sleeve of the producers of this television series.
Right.
She is really what's going to draw everybody back in and hold it together. So Tulip was definitely part of my good news. What about you?
I gotta go with Cassidy.
Yeah, so tell me what you loved about Cassidy.
Anybody who jumps out of an airplane at 30,000 feet, I mean, what the hell? That's what we're gonna do.
And I've got to say, wicked fight scene, and the fact that he decants the blood from the chest of the pilot.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you know, it was an introductory episode, right?
Yeah.
We see Tulip, you know, apparently using a homemade bazooka to bring down a helicopter.
It's arts and craft times, kids.
we see Cassidy kill about a dozen guys in a private jet and then bail out the emergency exit with an umbrella for a parachute.
Right, which apparently didn't work all that well.
Yeah, and then we got Jesse, who clearly has some daddy issues.
Right. Well, and you know, so here's another one of my goods is that the way that we were introduced to each character, the fight scenes were kind of introductions to those characters. I mean, definitely that was the way that Tulip and Cassidy were brought in, and they had killer fight scenes. And then I think we really kind of got a sense of who Jesse was when he had that fight scene in the bar where he broke that guy's arm.
Right.
So I think the way that they pulled in kind of the darkness of each character and the flaws of each character into those fight scenes, that was a really cool way to introduce them to us. And Tulip did hers with just such a great sense of humor. I mean, such glee when she was doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Anything else in the gospel, the good news for you?
No, I mean, just laying it all out and everything. Mm-hmm. The overall tone of the show, which is pretty Black Six sense of humor.
Which is just perfect. It's so good.
You know, I mean, you know, from the sign on the church to...
Yes.
The preacher explaining that he's to Donnie that Donnie's going to hear the sound.
And what did it say? It was like the cry of a little rabbit, or
bunny in a bear trap.
Yeah. Are you ready to make that sound? Well, so in my good also, I just loved the way that they introduced for lack of a better term at this point, the entity to us through the vehicles of those various preachers. Right.
And I don't know. Okay, so that was definitely in the good. Right, it was the little snippet on television about Tom Cruise at the Church of Scientology. Clearly, the entity inhabited him for a moment and blew him up too.
Well, and I thought about it, right, and I didn't catch until this rewatch that the preacher in Russia was actually a priest in a satanic group.
I didn't catch that at all.
Yeah. When you look at it, when they shut the doors on the church, there's actually an upside down pentagram with a goat's head.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And they refer to the preacher there as the magister.
Okay.
So I thought it was really fun. You know, the entity comes into this person obviously of tremendous religious faith. Take it as you will, but this preacher in Africa, and rejects him completely.
I don't know that it rejects him. Maybe it does. It's not clear. It's not clear if it's a rejection or...
Does it reject him? Is the vessel just too small?
The vessel can't handle it.
Yeah. But so there's no match there with this guy who is ardently faithful in his tradition. There's no match with the guy who is satanic and therefore... in most people's thoughts, kind of evil. And then we have the grand charlatan, Tom Cruise, and there's no match there either. So what does it say about this entity, and what does it say about Jesse, that Jesse's the match? I mean, is Jesse like the right balance of all of those things?
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear that Jesse is anything but good.
He's anything but good, and actually, when you look at it, he is a little bit of a charlatan. He's kind of one of those snake oil Southern preachers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I kind of think he's got characteristics of all three of the vessels that were rejected or incapable of handling whatever this entity is.
Yep.
Which that I also thought was a really great vehicle of introducing that particular entity as a separate character into the story.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course, the problem is we've seen 5 more episodes, so it's hard not to discuss the entity more. But
and I haven't watched the most recent one. I kind of held off on watching it, and I'm glad I haven't because I know that they do disclose more about what's going on. So,
well, I guess they do and they don't, right?
Well, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through the first graphic novel, which I don't remember how many of the issues of the comic it contains, but so I've also got a little better sense of what it is from that perspective. Right. But I'm also thinking that this is going to end up being a lot like The Walking Dead. They're going to cherry pick what parts of the comic they use or what they twist for their own.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Interest, So I think that while the comic book is a guide and it's source material, it's not going to be verbatim from the comic.
No, it's clear it's not. I mean, from the beginning. So.
I guess so. The final thing that I would say in the good news is, I thought the ending with Ted was so cool. So Ted's the parishioner who's so obnoxious.
Yes.
And I just went back and was kind of looking at all of the things that he was saying. He was talking about his
heart.
Right. But I mean, this guy's like just totally laying all this stuff on Jesse. He's talking about his birth history and how it's not his fault. He just had to get out of that thing. And now she's telling me that she knows why I have eczema, or she's telling me that I smell horrible. And he's just so annoying. And then you're right. Jesse says to him after he receives the word, God, what did he say? I wrote it down. It's something like, tell the truth, tell her the truth.
Yeah, open your heart.
Be brave, honest. Tell her the truth, open your heart.
Yep.
And so this guy, he quickly walks away from the church and he's muttering this under his voice. And then you see him getting on the plane and he's saying this while he's getting on the plane and while he's renting his car. And I had no idea it was going to go where it went.
Oh.
I mean, I totally knew that he was going to go and confront his mother now that he's been talked to by the preacher who's got the word of God, or so we think.
Got the word of something.
But I had no idea he was going to end up cutting his heart out, and now I have to open my heart. So there were so many good things about this episode that I had a really hard time finding anything to be really critical of, quite honestly.
Right. Right, absolutely.
I mean, that said, if you're ready, we can move on to the Book of Job, which are kind of the trials and tribulations, not just of the characters, but, maybe things that we had challenges with as the reviewers.
Sure.
I will say that one thing that I really struggled with just as a watcher is that Cassidy's accent was so thick and he spoke so fast that at first I had a really hard time understanding him.
Oh, I'm here to tell you 5 episodes in, I don't understand a single thing he says.
Well, and so, this is probably the 3rd time I've watched this all the way through, really paying attention to it this first episode, and you can tell that I'm completely obsessed with it, that I would be willing to do that. And tonight I felt like, oh, okay, I get what he's saying.
Yeah.
And it was really paying close attention and looking at it with a critical eye and not just watching it casually.
Right.
So, I think that, unfortunately, that is potentially challenging for some of the watchers.
I think so.
And I think that it does distract a little bit.
Yep.
So I'm hoping they work on that. Did you have anything in particular that was challenging for you as a watcher, or that you thought was like really challenging and difficult for one of the characters?
I just thought that, like you said, the accent, Cassidy's accent, of course, was problematic. Also, just you have to really be okay with everything is insane here, right? You have no idea what's going on, right? We jump quickly from some guy giving a really lame ass sermon in a broken down township, Hamlet, right? I don't even know. I mean, bump in the road, right? That town is so small. It's so desolate. And I mean, but you're jumping from that to this guy Cassidy on an airplane who then decides to kill everybody on the airplane because he's actually some kind of vampire. And these guys are coming to kill him.
Which I completely did not get at first. I was like, what? Until he bit the guy's neck. And then I was like, okay, I think I know where this is going, but I'm not sure.
Right, yeah, he's a vampire. Okay. To, this little interlude where the town decided to replace their politically incorrect Native American mascot with some furry.
Right.
What was it? The groundhog? It was a groundhog, I think, right?
I can't remember. I've got it written down.
And the town gets into a fight, and they basically beat the old mascot beats the new mascot to death.
I've got a comment about that in the Word in just our discussion of the series in general, because it made me think something tonight that I hadn't thought before watching it. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You do have to be okay with this being crazy. The other thing that I realized is that you've got to be okay with this being dark and over the top. I was talking with a friend of mine today who doesn't watch The Walking Dead because it gives her nightmares. Tried to watch Breaking Bad, couldn't watch that because it grossed her out. And I was like, I adore Preacher and I want everyone to watch it because I want it to get great reviews and great ratings and be on forever, but don't watch it. Because it's funny, but I think the blood and guts are going to freak you out.
Yeah, I don't know. It was pretty crazy, though, right?
Yeah. And again, I just got to say the fight scenes were amazing. I mean, I have never seen somebody just casually break an arm like that before. And the thing that was so awesome about Jesse's fight scene is that he was grinning the whole time he was doing it.
Well, because that's who he is, and that's, again, something, it's a theme, and it's a theme that Tulip is hitting on, that
we are who we are. Yeah. And I love the way she says it. We are who we are, Jesse Custer.
I think the other thing that was kind of a bummer for me, though, is not a knock on Dominic Cooper, who I think is a good actor and doing a great job, but he just does not have the voice that I imagined this character having.
So I actually listened to the only other Preacher podcast that I know of out there yesterday. I listened to the first episode of their podcast, in part to kind of see what they were doing, but also to kind of see what their take was.
Yeah.
And one of the hosts on that show had a hard time with Dominic Cooper. Just, first of all, because he wasn't like the big towering Jesse that the people from the comic books know.
Right.
But also because he sounded so hesitant, especially when he was giving the sermons. And then he was like, but I realized that Jesse Custer really is hesitant while he's giving those sermons because that's not where he wants to be. So I thought that was interesting. I think we're going to continue to see Dominic Cooper evolve into this role. And I'm lucky, again, I didn't have the preconceived notions about who Jesse was. But...
yeah, and it's the only thing I took from the comic book, right? Like, I didn't even remember that Tulip in the comic book is a blonde.
Yeah.
Because it makes no difference.
Actually, I think it's an incredible choice. I'm really glad that they did it.
Oh, yeah, I think she's great.
I think it makes it more challenging to have Tulip O'Hare be a black woman in the South.
Yeah.
Hanging out with these two white guys.
We're finally not whitewashing the roles.
Right. That was really my only challenge as far as the episode went. I'm sure that like anybody, I'll find more things to dig into as I watch this further, but I just enjoyed it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Revelation. So was there anything that you felt like you really learned about a character or the character's motivation, or anything that you really thought of in terms of crazy predictions or things that you wanted to see in future episodes?
I just want to see Jesse break more arms. I think that they should have Jesse do that to somebody every 2 episodes.
It was pretty compelling. So, I would say that the thing in terms of Revelation and crazy predictions is that it just was so great because it left me wanting more. I mean, it really left me with wanting to know where this character was headed, or if that question was going to be answered. And it made me really want to look at backstories of different characters and kind of learn more about them.
Right.
And they did that really, really well. They kind of doled out enough of a story that you were really hooked, but, didn't answer the question. You've got to come back for it.
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? You got to, in this first episode, you got to be okay with the fact that you, at the end of the episode, don't know anything about what's going on.
Right. Oh, that actually brought up another thing that I thought was a really cool thing that was part of the individual preachers that the entity came in contact with. So yeah. I don't know what to call these guys yet. Our watchers, our trackers. But if you notice, they kind of try to fit into each different culture with the way that they're dressed. And it's really funny because it's actually a little bit awkward and they don't quite fit. But when they go to Africa, they're in jodhpurs and boots and pith helmets.
Safari straight out of Central Casting.
And when they're in Russia, they're in these kind of, older suit coats and the beaver hats. And then they show up in Texas and they're in the suit and the boots and the cowboy hat.
Yeah, I mean, just all straight out of Central Casting.
And it's hilarious because they're so awkward.
Yeah, and those characters just get funnier as the series goes on.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's see. So a couple of questions that I did have just in terms of where things are going to go. So, I hope, and I think they will, are they going to explain the entity more? I mean, Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, is that what you said his name was?
Yeah.
They do. I mean, they clearly have a mythology mapped out for what this entity is. But are they going to stick to that in the series? Are they going to tell us more? Or is it just, it is what it is, and we're going to follow it from here?
Yeah, I don't know.
And another thing, I mean, it really made me want the backstory of Jesse's father's death.
We will get that, obviously.
I hope so. I mean, it's obviously formative for Jesse. I think the thing that tipped Jesse over in that bar fight was not getting the heck knocked out of him by Donnie, but Donnie threatening his kid.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
That was the trigger for Jesse. So, you kind of made the joke that he's got some daddy issues, but, I mean, he clearly does, and clearly his defense of that kid by just, I don't even know what to say, beating the hell out of Donnie.
Right.
His defense of that kid shows that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, one more thing, and then please jump in. So who the heck was Cassidy talking to in the bar? So just as the brawl is starting up between Jesse and Donnie, Cassidy's on the phone and he's like, I don't know how they keep finding me, but you've got to send me some money. And the guy hung up on him. I'm like, are there other vampires out there? There must be. Is there like a group of vampires that, that other vampires hide with and get bankrolls from? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. We don't know if Cassidy is one of a kind or...
It makes me think that there's backstory, and it makes me think that we're going to get some more of Cassidy's origins, but I don't know. Yep. But I'm interested.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So, anything else you have for Revelation?
No, I mean, again, pretty standard AMC pilot episode where you got to be okay. You know, this is a funny thing, right? Every network has their formula, and AMC has one too. You know, which is pretty much these slow plotting stories that are punctuated by quick bursts of violence.
I think that's a good way of describing it.
You know, a la Breaking Bad or
That big zombie show.
the big zombie show. Yeah, dead something walking something. I don't know. But yeah, AMC's got their formula too. It's a good formula. I like it. It's better than HBO's, which is needless sex and violence. Which makes me sound like a prude, but I'm not. It just, I watch Game of Thrones sometimes and I go, that truly added nothing to it. Nothing.
Whereas at this point, the corn cob in the guy's mouth, the dead cow, those added.
The funny thing is, of course, is that on cable, even though it's not really regulated by the same rules as network, but cable tends to avoid sex as much as the networks do. Right, so you end up with some incredible violence on these AMC shows, right? And almost no sex whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there was some in Hell on Wheels.
There's also been some in The Walking Dead,
but it's
pretty subtle.
Oh yeah, there's a couple scenes in Breaking Bad early on, but not much. Yeah. And just again, I think HBO maybe goes a little too far sometimes, but and I could do a whole podcast just on the formula of CW, the formula of CBS, the formula of HBO. But yeah, overall I think it's good. I mean, I'm 5 episodes in now, and I'm starting to enjoy it. The thing that cracks me up the most, though, is my wife adores this show. She thinks this thing is hilarious.
Does she? I'm so glad.
It's not really her thing. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
See, we're counting on the Lens of the world, man, because I think it's going to reach an audience that a lot of other shows haven't. I think it's really gonna hit a nerve.
Oh yeah, very black humor. So I mean, it's very, very good.
So, just in terms of little things that I kind of wanted to mention, the music. Oh my god, the music choices they made for this episode, for this pilot, were so great. I mean, the Johnny Cash song, the Willie Nelson opening.
Right.
I didn't catch who did the ending song, but I'm pretty sure it was Tom Waits. So they just made some really great music choices.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Yeah. And then I cracked up when I heard the name of the town, Anvil. So I started thinking about an anvil, and I'm like, okay, I know that the town in the series is ANNE, but when you think about an anvil, it's like, something that steel is tempered against.
Right.
And when you think about what our characters are what's happening to everybody, I mean, even other smaller characters like Arseface, like Donnie's kid, everybody there is being tempered by something. And so I thought that name was really cool, and I thought there was deeper meaning to that.
Right.
I'm looking through my notes. Yeah, so the savages were ditched for the prairie dogs. Oh, so that. I was watching all of that, and I was just watching the conflict between the politically correct people and the not so politically correct people, and I thought, this is an allegory for our country right now.
Yeah, sort of, kind of.
It was pretty cool. I mean, I don't know that it was really intended that way, but I was watching that tonight, and I was like, wow, this is our electoral system in the U.S. right now.
Hey, it's football in Washington, D.C.
And the line that Jesse said to Sheriff Root when all of that was going on, he's trying to get Sheriff Root to investigate Donnie's relationship with his wife, and Sheriff Root's like, I'll take a formal complaint. And then Jesse finally says, yeah, I bet that wife-beating, squirrel-murdering redneck vote, I imagine that's a key demographic for you.
Yeah.
Just some awesome lines like that, some really clever lines throughout. And again, I think they really tell us a lot about who those characters are and who they're going to be. I mean, yep. Root and Jesse obviously have some really significant history, and I'm hoping that we'll get some exploration of that.
So that's something too, right? Speaking of Donnie and the fact that he beats up his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe her that she likes it?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I was watching that, and definitely the first time I watched it, I thought, oh, this is a put on. She doesn't enjoy this. And I actually thought, God, maybe she's getting possessed by something that's making her tell Jesse that she likes it. Kind of, getting sucked into the whole theme of the show. I'm not sure that she does. I definitely thought not, and now I'm a little more like, oh, okay, well, maybe she does.
I'm afraid that maybe she does, and I'm not. That's one thing I'm not sure I.
Mm-hmm. Well, when she described the kind of violence in their relationship, like he scalded her with a tea kettle, I'm like, that's kind of crossing that BDSM line a little bit.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where they go, but I'm afraid that there's some. I may sound weird, kind of politically correct, I suppose, but I think I do take offense to how they might be portraying that.
Well, and it'll be also very interesting to see if ultimately it's disclosed that she was covering.
Yeah, I don't think she is. And that's a problem.
I don't think she is either. Well, it's certainly not something that would derail me from the series or make me hate the series, but it's definitely something that I wonder if they'll even pick up again. But I also watched it, and the first time through, I was like, she's totally giving him a yarn, and tonight I was like, nah, I think she really enjoys this relationship.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, kind of problematic.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention, yes, some of the transitions were really abrupt, like going from the beginning of the story to all of a sudden it's Cassidy at 30,000 feet. But There are also some really awesome transitions. Like, I don't know if you caught the transition where as Cassidy is hurtling toward the earth after he leaps out of the plane, the very next thing is Jesse in the diner talking with the church volunteer about the Starbucks at the other church, and he squeezes ketchup out of his ketchup bottle and it goes splat.
Yeah.
And it was such a great transition, really artful in terms of stuff like that. What do you think they're going to do with Arseface? Because, I've since learned more about kind of the original line with that character. But when he's sitting and talking with Jesse about missing church and about, I think there are some things that are so bad that God can't forgive you. The first time I watched that, it definitely made me think he did something kind of gross. Like maybe he molested a kid or, that there was something bigger than what the history of the character in the comic is.
Right.
Which I don't want to spoil it because I don't think it's been totally revealed.
But it's clear going forward that, there's a lot more there. Yeah,
it seems like there's a lot more than just the relatively simple history given to the kid in the comic book. So.
Right. So again, it is a slightly different show. We'll see what they do.
Yeah. And I gotta say, just as an aside about him, I really love that character. He's really sympathetic. It's really easy to feel compassion for him. And he just has this innocence and this spark, in spite of apparently having done something really bad, that makes him a really appealing character.
Yeah.
I love the interaction between him and Jesse, and I really came away from this episode just really feeling a lot for that character.
Yeah, so we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. I don't know that I have a lot else that's different, or that really goes much beyond that. I just, again, I just think it's a fabulous show, and I'm really hoping that people watch it. And I want to put a plug out there. It is still available on AMC's website for free viewing. So if you don't have cable, or if you don't have AMC but you're interested in picking it up, like as an iTunes series, or trying to get caught up, so far AMC has been pretty generous about posting free viewing on their website.
Yep.
I think that they're trying to engage an audience, which I think is a really great idea. And I would just really encourage people to watch this because it's tons of fun.
It's an amazing show.
Yeah, it is. So
it's truly
go ahead.
Yeah, so actually I was going to say I think that's kind of where we're at. It's an amazing show. Yay!
Yeah, thank God, right? Because it could have been really bad, but it's really awesome. It sounds like I'm going to dial you back in for one, maybe two more this season. I don't know. We'll kind of hash it out.
Right.
I think next week my evil little sister is going to be my other half.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it.
And then Brian, with whom I do Biters, has agreed to step in periodically as well. So I think we're going to have a really nice set of diverse voices. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yep.
So I want to thank you for premiering The Word with me and for coming up with the really cool title.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody. So we will see you again about this time next week. And thank you for tuning in.
I left his body